Welcome to part 2 of Leadership Rediscovered with Julie Smith. If you missed part 1, please go back and listen to it. She is so incredible. And this is just a continuation of that great conversation. I teach feedback a lot
Yeah.
and work with
Yeah.
people a lot on feedback. And the one thing I will also tell them is it's not 5-to-1 in one sentence
Right.
either. It has
Right.
to be different moments. And I think that can be a struggle.
Yeah.
Number one, sometimes people don't have 5 nice things to say
Right.
or nice
Right.
positive nonverbal reactions to give someone. Perhaps, let's say it's a manager-employee type relationship.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't like the person that I'm
Right.
working with. And
Right.
so maybe I think they're a poor performer and I have nothing positive to say to them. So I think sometimes that's a struggle for leaders. I think the relationship, some people will say time. I don't have that much time
Yeah.
to
That's right.
invest in talking to
Yeah.
someone or
Yeah.
interacting with them. But these are small things. This can be literally if you're like, "Hi, Laura, nice to see you," and you smile at me and
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
respond like back to you.
Exactly. It doesn't always have to be performance related.
Yeah.
It's the quality of the interaction.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean that's really critical. The other
Mhm.
thing too is I think when if you can't think of good things to say, your bar might be too high. So one of the
Mm.
things that I coach CEOs around is the difference between base behavior and content behavior.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll say more about that. This
Well,
is fascinating.
yeah. So content behavior is the thing you're after, right? Because that's what's going to get me the results. So I was
Mhm.
working with a CEO and he was, they weren't using their forecasting tools. So they were missing their forecasts all the time,
Mm.
right? So his content behavior was use those forecasting tools, show me the data behind your forecast,
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The base behavior was people just weren't bringing him problems. They weren't being truthful. Okay,
Okay.
so forget that stuff. I don't care how many times you're hammering them over that stuff.
Mhm.
Anytime somebody brings you a problem, that base behavior, say, thank you.
Mhm.
Because
Thank you
we
for
can't
bringing
deal
this
with
to our
these other things
attention.
unless all those things come out.
Yeah.
And so once he started to understand that, and I had to give him an example from with his teenage daughter.
Hmm.
He said, I've told her that if she's out drinking or friends are drinking,
Mhm.
that I don't want her drinking and I definitely don't want her in a car with somebody who has been. So
Mhm.
call me immediately, right? Well, the first time she calls, you're tempted to go after the content, which is, what were
Yes.
you doing out drinking? I told, versus thank you for calling me. We'll talk about the
Yeah.
other thing tomorrow. I'm going to come and get you. I'm so glad you're safe.
Yeah.
And we'll talk tomorrow. Don't worry about it. You
Yeah.
did the right thing.
It's focusing on maybe the behavior versus the action that you're trying to get or that result that you're trying
Right.
to get out of
Right.
it.
You
But
have to
really,
step down a bit.
what's driving
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
behavior? That's so interesting. And I think, I'll work with leaders a lot of times who may disassociate or try to avoid spending time with folks on their team that they deem as complainers, as an
Yeah.
example,
Right.
and
Right.
I'm always curious about that because I think, are they complaining to just be difficult or are they truly trying to
Right.
raise, are these canaries in the coal mine? I don't know. You tell me. It's different for different people, but I think sometimes people who are trying to bring about
Exactly. Yeah.
problems, I always say it makes me more nervous when people stop
Mhm.
saying anything
Right.
because then to me they've kind of checked out and they don't care anymore. If
Exactly.
even if they're bringing feedback forward that's
Yeah.
negative or, nobody's doing this thing that they're supposed to be doing. Well, at least they care enough to speak up about it and to say, hey, I care enough to say, people aren't throwing the recyclables in the recyclable container and, we need to do a better job of that. Okay, well, thank you that you are
Mhm.
seeing that, acknowledging that, and that you actually care enough to speak up about it.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's a simple
No,
example, but
that's a great example because that's the base behavior. If you care enough to speak
mhm.
up about it versus the content, okay,
Yeah.
then you could move to the content and say, well, help me figure out a solution.
Yeah.
So, so you're not just stuck in that complaining mode because that can be a problem too for that person
Yeah.
because it can hurt their career. But you're bringing up an important point that 5-to-1's only one aspect of what they
Yes.
found, okay? 13-to-1 is the upper end.
Whoa.
So
So if you think 5-to-1's hard.
yeah, if you go above 13-to-1, it's equally predictive of divorce. Yeah, nobody ever
Interesting.
hears that aspect.
No.
Now,
Okay, why is
why?
that?
Why do you think? If somebody is 13 to 1, oh, good job, Laura. That's good. That's
I would feel like someone's being maybe disingenuous or condescending if it's just so much, because I'm like, really, I'm not that great. I know I'm not that great. So, like, can we talk about the things I also can improve upon
that's
and get better
exactly it.
at?
That's exactly it. And it's you're not engaging in the relationship. It's
Hmm.
just kind of, and they found people who would sit there and go, oh yeah, good point. Yeah. hmm And you hate
Oh,
that in a relationship, right?
yes.
But there was that point of 13 to 1 if it goes above that. So that sweet spot is 5 to 1 and 13 to 1.
Wow.
Okay. And then they did research about the one. So the one, if you do it in a way that's kind of redirective or,
Mm-hmm.
speaking your truth
Mm-hmm.
and, with integrity versus the criticism, the condensation, the defensiveness,
Yes.
the stonewalling. Yeah,
Hostility. Yeah.
they've got the one also codified in terms of, they call them the 4 horsemen. So even though you're
Oh,
doing 5 to 1, if that one is one of these
one of the
really
four,
destructive,
and I can't remember. Do you remember them off the top of your head by
they're
chance?
the
I can't remember.
stonewalling, defensiveness, criticism. And I just gave a speech on this a
Oh,
week ago. I can't remember what the fourth one is.
it's been a while since I looked at them, but
It-
those are all
yeah,
stonewalling,
yeah,
criticism. Yeah. I think it's intent, right? Because if someone is giving me critical feedback, but I know that they're doing it because they see the opportunity for me to get better. They care about me getting
yeah,
better. They want me to get better. I am far more receptive to
yeah,
that
right.
than when I feel like they are upset about something else that has nothing to do with me and they're discharging their discomfort about that onto me, or
Yes,
they're just being mean
right. It's
spirited,
about them
or
protecting themselves.
exactly,
Yeah,
yeah,
versus helping you. Yeah,
exactly, yeah.
yeah,
And you can see through that
yeah,
very easily.
yeah. And that's, that people need feedback on how they give feedback.
Mhm.
That's the key, right?
Mhm.
And we've all had hard learnings that way. We've all,
Yes.
you know.
But if I had an opportunity to say, here's what I'm expecting to get out of this conversation today, that would be a nice starting point, especially in a feedback
That's right.
conversation, because then you kind of know. I think that's the hard thing. I always tell people sometimes it can help to say, how do you think things are going?
Yeah,
To start with that question because you're trying to figure out where's their head in all this,
yeah, yeah,
especially with poor performance. A lot of times people know they're not hitting the
right,
mark without that conversation
right.
happening. And so it might not be as jarring a feedback or blind, you might not be blindsiding them as much as you may think you are when you're giving them that feedback,
Mm-hmm.
because they might know, not that they feel great about it and want to talk about it, but I mean, they might already kind of have a
Mm-hmm.
baseline there that you can work off of, which makes that conversation flow a little bit better, I think.
One thing we added in our app, and we're working on this right now, is how to quantify that 5 to 1 for different
Mm,
relationships.
okay.
Okay. And one of the things the patients asked for, we had a group of patients who we called them frequent flyers. And they said, "Oh no, we don't want things to be anonymous." They had some children who, one family had $1 million bill.
Whoa.
I mean, they had children that they were there like every day or every other day or things like
Oh,
that. And
wow.
they said, "No, no, we want to be allies in this. We want them to know who we are,
Hmm.
etc." And that on the physician side or care team, nurse, any of them, they said, if we get feedback and it's so general we don't understand it.
It's not helpful.
Exactly.
One of my
So,
number one complaints about
yeah,
360 surveys.
right,
Yeah, it's like,
right.
here's your numbers. Okay.
So
What
what
do I
they
do with
helped us
that?
build is a text messaging capability that, how you have text messaging, you can do the thumbs up or the
Yeah.
heart and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Instead, they helped us build, this is actionable and clear, thank you.
Hmm.
Or could you give some specific examples? So we've got really quick ways that they can underline, highlight certain things and just send it back.
And it's real time. So, like,
Yeah,
say more about this,
yeah, yeah. Or right after the thing, I'm not sure, if you said that I didn't treat you with respect, what was it? Was it eye contact? What was it?
Hmm.
And
It's so much more collaborative than how sometimes that
yeah,
interaction probably feels for both,
yeah,
that it can be very transactional. You come in with a problem, I'm going to fix your problem, you're going to leave, and it just feels very transactional in nature, whereas this is we're going
Yeah.
to work together
Yeah.
to, I am here to help you, but this is kind of help me help you a little bit, right? And
Exactly.
let's work together to give you the best care that we want to give. We're all on the same team here. We want to help you and you want that help, right? That's why you're here. So help us help you get
Yeah.
the best experience possible.
And
Just makes
what we're
sense.
saying is we call it Performance Ally,
Yeah.
is the company's name. Our app is Ally Assist.
Okay.
The breakthrough of what we're doing is we're creating the only, so far, performance networking tool that's out
Yes.
there. Okay.
Yes.
So if you think of social networks where
Mm-hmm.
people get together around common interests,
Mm-hmm.
we're pulling together performance networks where we're coming together because of common goals, mutual goals, and we can help each other.
Very
And
cool.
also, just like you have one-off messaging, private
Mm-hmm.
message me,
Mm-hmm.
you can get private or public feedback. You've got a lot of control over
Oh,
that.
very cool.
Okay, yeah. So
But
we just designed it. People get on the system, and it is designed like any other sort of tool you get. It doesn't require any training. You've got your profile
yeah,
page, you've got text messaging. It's all
but it feels very social, like social media-ish, and so
exactly. Yeah,
most people have some sort of profile
yeah,
on social media, so they're probably comfortable with how to
yeah,
use it and figure
exactly.
it out.
Only some of the things we have are like, how do I prefer to get feedback? Okay, so
Oh,
some of your preferences. Is there anything that we used to do this at CLG is people would write a list of the things that would be, really nice recognition things for them. So
mm-hmm.
you might want CDs from, the what are they
Mm-hmm.
called, the Dirty Heads that
Yeah.
band, and I might like something that's a Starbucks coffee or something. But at
Yeah.
least you knew going into it. I don't like to get public acknowledgement. Don't do it at a company
Yes.
meeting. Whatever you do, that's awful.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And versus, don't send anything to my home. Some people hate that. And we used to see companies just, oh, the families want to know. And they were like, no, we don't.
No.
It's all
My family
individualized,
doesn't even know I work here. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah,
and everything has to be personalized
it
these
does
days.
have to be personalized. And I love that because what motivates people is different and how
Yeah.
people want to be rewarded is different. And that's hard. That's hard for organizations because a lot of times they're like, we do not have the time to try to figure this out
Yeah.
of what's going to motivate you versus you. It's really not that hard, actually. Actually, I had a guest on the podcast one
Mm.
time who she has her staff do the love languages, the 5
Oh, yeah.
love
Yep.
languages to
Yep.
figure out, which I thought
Those are great.
whoever hears that used in a workplace setting, right? Like, oh no, that's for, personal relationships. But she's like, no, it's been really helpful to know that information because, maybe this person's really rewarded and recognized by words of
Big difference.
affirmation,
Yeah.
but somebody else, maybe it is the gift. Maybe they do love you sending something to their
Yeah.
home or, and it doesn't require a lot of time and energy and effort to figure that information out
Yeah.
for people.
Yeah. Yeah. And what we're going to do is we, get it out there such that people can think that out for themselves too.
Mm-hmm. I love that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
So I know you have spent so much time in your career talking about leadership, working with leaders, and one of the things that I'm really trying to drive on this podcast is just exposing people to different thoughts and ideas and definitions of leadership and tips on how to be better
Yeah.
leaders because it's not a skill that's
Yeah.
really taught in the same way that other important skills are taught, especially more technical skills. So I would love to hear your definition of leadership and then maybe some tips that you could share with leaders from your beautiful wisdom bank that you have to help us all.
I would say leadership is about creating a happy, high productivity workplace. Okay. Creating the environment
Mm-hmm.
such that people are happy at work and they're
Mhm.
highly productive.
Oh, I love that.
And you do that through your personal interactions, just like we're talking about the 5-to-1 and thinking that through,
Yes.
every time. Where am I with that person? What's the bank account
Yeah.
with respect to those interactions? You do that through providing systems
Mm-hmm.
and tools and resources and systems. And the higher you go in the organization, the more you really have to be carefully thinking through the systems that you're providing
Right.
to people, IT systems,
Yes.
the allocation of resources is really important. And then I also think it's about culture. So it's
Yeah.
not just your one-on-one interactions, but it's
Mm-hmm.
what sort of culture are we trying to create? I think about that a lot as an entrepreneur because you hear about, the Hewlett Packard culture that was started in the garage is the same one today.
Mm-hmm.
Um, CLG or Lula is 30 years old now, and I've had people
Wow.
calling me and saying, "Did you guys purposely do this?" DEI is really important now, but I look back and
That
that's what
was
we did naturally.
always,
Did you think about it
yeah.
from a systems perspective? Or, one of our cultural aspects was, we'll roll up our sleeves and we're with you until
Mm-hmm.
you're successful
Mm-hmm.
and we won't take the front stage like another big consulting firm will. It's not about us, it's
Mm-hmm.
about you.
Yeah.
And that has been pervasive. And since Leslie and I, kind of retired from CLG, that stamp is still there.
I love
Everybody is like,
that.
we are the hardest working people that you'll ever see because of you. We're
Yes.
doing this for you as a client.
Wow.
I heard a story during uh, the hurricane down in New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
One of our major clients got rid of all the consultants except for CLG, and our consultants slept in the tents with
Oh
them for almost
my
a year
goodness.
to keep the refineries running, to keep,
Wow.
everything going. And they said,
Mm-hmm.
"You're it. You guys are it." And that happened time and time again for us because they knew we were there for them and we would do, whatever needed to be
Mm-hmm.
done.
Mm-hmm.
So, you have to lay those values and those, what's that look like? And then you have to demonstrate it as a leader.
You
You
need
have
to
to live
live
those
it
things. Yeah.
every
Yeah.
day.
And when people
Yeah.
say they need, system support, you can't just sit there and go, "Oh, just, make do." I
Yes.
understand, but we can't afford that right now. You have to explain to them trade-offs on those things, get their
Right.
thinking about what else needs to be done. You've just got to be really clear with them.
Yeah, and help them understand the why,
Mhm.
because I can give you so many examples, and I know you have probably the same experience where a new system gets rolled out, and the people who are actually responsible for using that system day in and day out aren't often the ones that make the decision
Right.
to bring the system in, number one. But I've heard many times from employees that they'll say, this. We have to engage with this system to
Mhm.
make our bosses' jobs easier or their life easier.
Yeah.
We're the ones that have to do all this so that they can do this. And there's this separation. And when I hear that, I think, such a missed opportunity
Yeah.
to explain why this system is here in the first place and what the benefit can be for everyone, not just because I know that it's not just to make their job easier,
Right.
from a leadership perspective. There's other reasons why it was brought forward, but oftentimes it's not communicated
No, it's not. Yeah,
why.
there's a lot of things like that, or people say, "You want me to work safely, but, we haven't
Mhm.
addressed this equipment issue, or we haven't done this or that." All of those trade-offs at the senior level have to be described. And one of the
Yeah.
guy that I was talking about with the forecast accuracy, he said once the issue started to surface, he goes, "My God, there's so much I can help with." And he
Yes.
said they don't have that bigger picture of what we're doing and
Mhm.
how we're moving things around and client relationships and things like that. He said, and he got excited,
Yeah.
rather than thinking people were just griping and complaining.
Yeah.
He really got excited. And we actually put a 4-month moratorium on you bring us bad problems. Okay. Bring us your worst and nothing will happen. Okay. You get a freebie.
Okay.
We don't care how bad it is, bring it forward.
Bring it
And people
forward.
just because that's the only way we can deal with it.
Yes,
And
we just have
4
to
months,
know.
4 months, it was like a fire hose. And sure enough, they were able to turn around the forecast accuracy, which had a direct impact on earnings per share. And he actually did an interview in the New York Times, and they asked him about, your biggest leadership lessons. And he
Mhm.
said that behavior could be a root cause of poor performance. He said, "I'm a Stanford MBA." And he said, "I was never taught that, and I
Mm.
learned that from our consulting firm."
Yeah. That's
And he said,
amazing.
"I just couldn't believe it." And yeah, and he said, "It just changed everything about leadership for me and
Wow.
how I could part the waters and help people so they could do the right things."
Yeah, because you can have the best ideas, the best business strategies,
Yeah.
the most, brilliant, innovative designs, but if you don't have the alignment from the people, it's like your
Yeah.
engineering example, right? They could have created, those students could have created something magnificent, but if the people that needed to execute that
Yeah.
weren't engaged, weren't aligned, weren't sold on it, you're not going to get those results that you're looking for, right?
It's funny, when I first met him, I flew over to Europe, somebody said, just go to it. He's got a new strategy he's trying to unfold. Just go and sit in this, couple day meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So after the first break, his team was not having any of it. And these were all, senior executives. And I went over, and there was another guy with him. And he said, "Oh, Julie," he said, "this is my coach. He's been working with me for a long time." And I went, okay.
Why am
So
I here?
he goes, "What should I do? They don't seem to, how am I going to get them on board?" And his coach goes, "You tell him you're the leader." He said, "You just go back there. This is your decision to make." And
People like that.
And I know, I just sat there, and then he sat there and listened, and I thought, oh my gosh, this isn't going to go anywhere. I'll be on the first flight back.
Right.
And then he turned to me and he goes, "Well, what do you think?" And I go, "You can try it, but they're still not going to buy it." And I said, "You're not telling them why?"
Mm-hmm.
I said, "These are the things that I believe they're believing or they're thinking right now. You've got to draw that out of them.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to talk that through. You've got to be honest with them about why you're considering doing this. This is a life-changing strategy for them."
Yeah.
And so that started the relationship. So I mean, I've seen such a variety of coaches, from
Yes.
we had one financial institution. They'd literally have 3 coaches in the room for every meeting.
Wow. Wow.
And you'd sit there and think, oh my gosh, one personality coach, one
Oh my
leadership
goodness.
coach, and we were always the execution, get it done coach.
Yeah.
And
But
you just sit there.
really, I mean, in order to get to the point of execution, you're going to be covering all of those other, whatever those coaches are
Right,
representing.
might as well pull it together in a targeted
in
way, which is what we
one.
would help them with. We'd be
Oh
the
my
last ones
goodness.
standing usually.
That's wild. So as you think about all the things that you've observed with leaders sitting in all those rooms, and things that have tripped leaders up the most, I mean, what tips or advice would you have if you could share, some best practices for leaders that they could incorporate into their day-to-day routine?
I'd say one of the biggest ones is we did a return on capital expended project with Global Oil.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Worked with the top 100. It started out there on what were they doing in their decision review meetings when they were making decisions about capital expenditures of 50 million and above.
Okay.
So some of them were up to 5 billion.
Wow.
Right? So you don't know what the payoff for an oil field build-out's going to be until 5-6 years down the road. So you're looking at net present value and a bunch of data to try to figure out what are the current government conditions, all sorts of things. One of the things that we were called in for is, what's going on behaviorally.
Mm-hmm.
What are we doing that we could maximize this? So we reached out to Harvard, Stanford, and a number of people around decision quality. What are the behaviors that underlie that?
Ooh.
And it's deceptively simple. Okay. And if I could help every executive learn these 3 behaviors to bring them to life in their key meetings, it would be transformational because it was for this company. They're still held out as the top performing company on ROCE, and they point to this 20 years later. Okay.
Goodness.
So behavior number 1 is make your thinking visible.
Make your thinking visible.
Okay. And there's sub things under that. Like, don't just start with this is what we need to do, but how did you get there?
Yes.
Okay. It's called the ladder of inference. How'd you get all the way up to
Gotcha.
this is what we need to do? What data were you using, et cetera? And we got that from Harvard. Second thing is help others make their thinking visible.
Ooh.
Okay. So don't be the leader who's running everything and has the right to, this is what I
Tell
think.
people
And
what you
then
do.
wonder why people aren't speaking up and we're not using the data that's put in front of us, right? Because everybody goes, oh, he's not going to look at that decision package. He's already made up his mind.
Yeah.
He's just trying to talk us into where he's going to go anyway. So help others make their thinking visible. And then the third is help synthesize the viewpoints and advance the discussion. Okay. So don't just ask a gratuitous question.
Right.
Laura, what are you thinking? Use that information, pull together threads. And guess what,
here's
Laura?
what I'm hearing from each of you.
And guess who that usually was in a leadership meeting? The loudest complainers. Because they're already the people who are hearing,
Yeah.
bits and
They're
threads, and
piecing
they're
it
trying to bring it to
together.
you as the leader. But
Yeah.
what they did is they also were really good at pulling things together. So we would sit there and
Mm.
literally, it's real easy. We had these leaders had a three-sided little fan, and they had to say which one they were doing
Oh,
to get started
I
because we
love
we
this.
did a whole global training
Yeah.
initiative. It was so fun to do,
Yeah, that
and
actually
ultimately
sounds
went to
really fun.
25,000 people.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
yeah. But that was those three behaviors and making sure it's balanced. So good,
Mhm.
balanced, high quality discussion to move to the best, highest quality decision.
Wow. So I would say, let's say we're going into a meeting room where we have to make a decision and I'm the leader.
Hmm.
Is it, maybe starting with asking questions of your team before you even walk in and say, all right, I've called you all here together today to tell you what I think we should do about XYZ? Is it more, let's try to pull out, well, not so much, Julie, what do you think? But, if you said, I think we should do this, okay, what's maybe asking some questions about what, just walk us through the process of how you got to that conclusion. That
Right,
seems
right.
interesting to me of kind of getting that out
Exactly. Yeah.
there.
Yep. Drawing them out, and what data were you looking at, or who
Mhm.
have you talked to? Have you learned something from others in the industry? You were recently at a conference. Tell me, what you
Yeah.
learned. Yeah. To have that curiosity to draw others out, because then you're looking for not consensus decision, not hierarchical decision, but
Mm.
what's the best, highest quality decision. But yeah, but
Yes.
the key thing too is the framing before you even get to the meeting. Okay, so
Okay.
you'll watch a lot of executive meetings and things. Nobody's really clear about
Why we're
what's the
here.
problem, right? Right. What's our focus for this
Yes.
discussion, and where are we going to head? So just meeting behaviors are really key
Well,
too.
that's huge too. I think it's Brene Brown I've heard talk about sometimes she'll ask people to just quickly, write on a post-it note what they think either the purpose of the meeting
Yeah.
is or what we're here to solve or whatever it is. And then they all have to show it at the same time and how different
Oh
it
yeah.
often is for people in a team, even teams that work very closely together all the
Yeah.
time. Just what are we even trying to solve here?
Yeah.
And are we clear about that? I mean, I can't imagine how that wouldn't lead to better and higher quality decision making.
Yeah. No, that's exactly it.
And also being able to kind of suss out, I think there's preferences sometimes for maybe people who only make data driven decisions. Or if someone says, well,
Mm-hmm.
I just think this is, I'm basing this more on gut. I
Mm-hmm.
think this is where we should go. And maybe there's someone else in the room that says, well, I looked at the data and this is what the data says. So that's what we should do.
Right.
Being able to kind of balance that, because I think sometimes it's like, okay, well, we're never going to listen to the gut feeling. We're always going to go with the data. But even
Yeah.
data can be
Right.
manipulated and managed. And
Exactly.
are we looking at the right data that's relevant? So getting people to talk about that whole process, I think, is huge, because then you're uncovering, okay, you're basing this decision on this data set over here, but what about all these other things that we haven't looked at or uncovered?
Yeah, no, I think that's really for them in this case, that data set did incorporate like people,
Mm,
processes, vision,
nice.
that
Nice.
where's it fit in the strategy as well as the
Yeah.
real hardcore data around the project.
Yeah.
And they're a very sophisticated process oriented company,
Very
so
cool.
they knew to do that. But
Yeah.
I think you're bringing up a really good point, which is when you're sitting in a meeting and they're thinking about, a new strategic initiative or kicking
Mm-hmm.
anything off at that level, you do have to incorporate that view of somebody's going to be managing this project. So,
Yes.
they're going to be going, don't kick off another thing. We can't
We
even,
have enough
yeah, we've got
strategic
70 some and
initiatives right
70
now.
other things we're trying to track. Then you've got the visionary going,
Yeah.
why are they so resistant? Then you've got somebody who's more people oriented going, the people, we haven't even talked about them, and how they're going to be impacted. So you have to think through those different sorts of viewpoints,
Yeah.
and the styles indicators really help.
Yes.
So there's a lot that I've learned through the years just by picking up different leadership tools and saying we need to be
Mhm.
cognizant of all these things. And to me, they're part of diversity.
Yes.
That's a
Yes.
broader. We all have different ways of looking at the world and styles and things like that. And you've
Yeah,
got
and we
to.
should take that into account.
Mm,
And really, I mean, when I listen to you, I hear you have to make the time. And it doesn't have to take a ton of time, but I mean, you have to take the time to sit down and say, okay, wait a second, time out. Are
yeah.
we making the right decision? Let's come to not necessarily the consensus, but let's collaboratively bring all the different viewpoints to the table, how we got to those viewpoints, so that we can make sure we are making that right decision instead of just one person always making it because my box is the highest on the org chart, or this
Yeah.
person's just the loudest one in the room, so they always get to do what they want. I mean, it's, of course, that would lead to better decisions, which
Yeah.
ultimately is going to get you
That's
the results
exactly
you're
it.
looking for, we hope.
So we had decision quality, team meeting behaviors, and then use of your tools. Those were the 3 that they had to
What was the last one?
use of your tools.
Use of your tools.
Because the other thing is, people would come to the meetings and wouldn't have even read the decision review packages, and that was an issue for the forecast accuracy project too. So they'd had all this training and all this stuff, and people remember 15% of what they've been
Right.
trained, and the part
If
you
that.
remember is different than what I remember. So
Right.
when we get together, in a meeting and we're all trying to use these
Yeah.
tools,
What'd
we're
you
like,
hear? What'd you write down? But that's so true, because a lot of times, again, I hear people complain about meetings constantly. And I think a lot of the complaint is people don't know why we're meeting in the first
Yeah.
place. The wrong people are in the room, too many people are in the room, all of that. But some of it is so simple as, can you just decide, does a meeting need to happen? Number one. And what is the purpose of the meeting? And are there materials people need to look at prior to, so
Yeah.
that they can come in and actually have a productive meeting?
If you, yeah, I think that's, there's one more thing that kind of comes to mind is if you think about just the basics of leadership. I mean,
Mhm.
just go to the foundational pieces, right? So
Yes.
the first time you move from being an individual contributor to a supervisor,
Yeah.
the foundational piece you need to get is how do we get alignment and clarity around expectations?
Oh,
Okay.
I could hug you right
Which
now,
is just what you're
Julie.
saying around the meetings, right? Then the second
Yes.
thing is how do we make sure there's good feedback so we know if
Yes.
we both had the same expectations and it's
Yeah.
happening.
And if you set really good, clear expectations, the feedback part is so much easier
That's right.
too.
Exactly. It starts there. And then the third is barrier removal. So I listen to you and I say, you weren't able to do it. What got in your way?
Mm-hmm.
And how can I help? Those are the 3 pieces. The literature is really, really clear coming out of Gallup,
Mm-hmm.
okay, that only 30% of employees get those 3 things,
Yes.
okay?
Yes.
And it's a supervisor's job to do that. They don't have
Yes.
time.
Yes.
So that's what our app is doing, is those 3 things.
Oh my
Okay.
goodness.
And if we can get that up to 80%, which is what Gallup, their
Yep.
research that is just rock solid.
It
You get that
is.
up to 80% of people getting those 3 things, expectations, feedback, and barrier removal. Your results soar.
Yeah.
And that's what we did at CLG.
Wow.
But we had to kind of, we used to call it feeding the beast. You had to
Yes.
really, ensure and have people write things down. Now we can just do that on an app and
You
have them
the
directly connect.
technology.
You don't have to have the supervisor be the stalling point or
Right. The barrier, the blocker. That's
yeah.
amazing. This is so cool. And it's so, I mean, again, you have had such an impressive career, but everything has just led you so perfectly to where you're situated today. And I'm so glad you
That's
didn't
true.
just ride off into the sunset and say, I've,
I
done
tried
my
that.
thing.
My problem is my hobby is this what I do. I mean,
Yeah, but you can
I love
tell.
what I do. And my husband would go, "You're not gonna retire." He goes, "Because that would be what you would do,
Yeah,
even if
yeah.
you retired."
What were you? Yeah.
But I consider this the last third of my career. And the
So
other thing
cool.
is, I go to the behavioral, conferences, and I'm on that board of trustees for a global, um, behavioral science
Mhm.
thing. And I'm always the youngest person there. They are 90, 95. They come with their
Yes.
boyfriends and girlfriends, and they're always. And I'm like, I do have a third of a career left,
Oh,
right?
at least. Yeah. Isn't that exciting?
There's
Like,
something,
okay.
but
Well,
everybody loves what we do, and we see the potential for doing, really
yeah.
helping the world.
Yeah.
And I look at my app or our app, and I think, gosh, we could really change the way people support each other and change the discourse that people have and the quality of
Yes.
that. And
Yes.
so I like thinking about our science in a big way.
For sure.
And so you can tell I'm excited about what
I
I'm
know.
doing.
Your excitement makes me excited. And I know, you've been at this for so many years that I am so impressed at your perseverance through all of it. And I think if you weren't passionate about it and you didn't care as much as you do, maybe you would have thrown in the towel. But I'm excited to see where this goes. And we'll put a link in the show
Perfect.
just so people can follow and learn more information, because I do think it's really cool. And I agree with you, coming from a different background, different perspective, I can see what you can see. I see that vision of how transformational and how much of a game changer this really can be for organizations. And that's exciting.
Excellent. Thank you.
Awesome. What do we leave on the table?
I think we've got everything.
Got it all.
I think you made me think of one thing.
What's that?
Which is, I told my husband when we got married, is I am a Taurus. And in the Chinese New Year, I'm a dog. So I am a persistent, loyal person. And I'm never giving up. And that's how I feel about just about everything in life. So I feel very blessed. I feel like WVU, gave me an incredible start, and all the opportunities I've had are just, I look back and I think, what an amazing career.
Yeah.
But it's just starting in terms of what the impact we can have.
Yeah. Oh, I'm excited. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
We will keep an eye on you. Maybe we could have you back when everything's fully launched and you can come and talk about.
That'd be great.
Okay.
I
Very
love
good.
it.
All right. I love it. Can we do a quick lightning round though? Because I like
Oh,
to
that's
end
right. Okay.
with my game. Because gamification, we didn't talk about that, but that's probably part of your, I would assume, part of your process.
No, we're not
too.
doing that.
No gamification.
No.
Okay. Well, then we'll get our gamification on right
Okay,
now.
let's get it.
I'll do it here. Okay, so how this works is you have 60 seconds to answer as many of these open-ended questions.
Okay.
I know, but they're easy. They're just about you. That's easy. All right. 1 minute. Here we go. What season best fits your personality?
Spring.
Okay. What's your most used emoji in text?
Let's see. Thumbs up, I guess. Yeah.
What book, song, movie, or podcast has had the greatest impact on your life?
This is weird. I was thinking about it the other day. God is love.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
To look into that. What's something about you that surprises people when they first hear it?
Oh, let's see.
I'd say that you owned a distillery.
I know, I'm pretty open. Yeah, that I owned a distillery. Right?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Fill in the blank. I spend too much money on
Oh my gosh. Chairs.
chairs. That answers the previous question too.
Everybody gets to take a chair when they leave my house because I order them and then I don't
my
like
gosh.
them, but I don't want to send them back.
Funny. What celebrity would you want to play you in a movie?
Let's see. Oh gosh. Meg Ryan.
Gosh, I love Meg Ryan. Okay, very good. Julie Smith,
There you
thank
go.
you so much for being here. This was awesome.
It
You blew my
was
mind.
so much fun talking
like
with
you did 15 years ago.
There
You
you go.
just keep blowing my mind. So I'm glad, like I said, glad that we can introduce you, hopefully, to people that haven't met you.
Yeah,
and
that'd be
get to
great.
inspired by you too. So
That'd be
thanks
great.
for the time today.
Thank you so much, Laura.
Absolutely. That's all the time we have today. Until next time, shine bright, everyone.